2 days ago, he came out with this video called "Breaking: 42% of Gaza Destroyed, 95 civilian death rate, no ceasefire, U.S. base attacked."
All right, guys, welcome to the show.
A lot of shit
I have
happened.
a really big show for you today. So, of course, I'm going to give you updates on what's happening in Gaza. We also have complete and utter Republican chaos right now. They are fundamentally incapable of picking a speaker, at least as of the recording of this video. And they've been trying quite a bit. It's not because they haven't been trying. We'll talk about that. We have Cenk Uygur versus Piers Morgan on the issue of Gaza. Cenk gets really, really heated in that one. And then we also have a laundry list of Trump's former confidants flipping on him, one after the other, and this has huge ramifications for him with his trials, his various trials. So we'll talk about all that and more. Everybody do me a big favor. Please click subscribe tremendously in the algorithm. We're trying to continue to grow. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it here.
Guys,
so
check out
nothing but gross, sad news coming out of Gaza at the moment. So this is from the UN. Gaza death toll passes 5,000 with no ceasefire in sight. So according to the World Health Organization, they're saying right now, hey man, we really, really need a ceasefire. What's happening on the ground is complete and utter devastation. The latest media reports from the Gaza Health Ministry
It's a genocide at this point.
indicate that the number of people killed in Gaza since October 7th is 5,087. Now,
Right now,
clear,
it's
this number
7,000.
is about a day old now. So that undoubtedly that
This is
number
2 days
has
old.
gone up since they released this. They say that women and children specifically make up more than 62% of the fatalities, with more than 15,273 people who've been injured. Now, let me be clear. They say 62% for women and children. That is actually not the civilian death number. Because when you count all the civilians, including like male civilians, that percentage skyrockets even more. I'm gonna give you some details on that in a minute. They also go on to say here, in addition to the overall death toll, the number of UN staff members working with the...
And remember, guys, you guys got to remember, Israel controls the water, the food, electricity, travel, like everything. They control everything. And then on top of that shit, they literally... Okay, so Israel recently turned the water back on, right? Listen to this. They turned the water back on, and guess what? And still no power, so you can't pump the water. So Israel's like, oh yeah, man, we're pro human rights, man. We're not gonna kill these innocent people and like treat them like garbage. We're gonna turn the water back on. No power. So they can't pump the water anyways. So they're basically like if they didn't have water. And America, it's like, all right, good job, man. Yeah, good job, Israel. Woo. Are you fucking serious? And he's about to mention right here that a bunch of United Nations, UN, our allies, and they help people around the world. United Nations schools and hospitals have been hit. Doctors Without Borders have been hit. Doctors killed, teachers killed, children killed. No Hamas around, no Hamas around, but they're gonna say that. But Hamas has underground tunnels. Hamas has underground tunnels, bro. Are you shooting fucking bunker busters? No, you're not. You're literally just demolishing the building. It doesn't go deeper than that. So they're just killing innocent civilians using Hamas as an excuse. Hamas is bad. But you have surpassed the amount of civilians that Hamas has killed. And remember, the United Nations itself has said that Israel has been committing war crimes because they have been stealing land. Their government, Israeli government, has been allowing settlers, armed settlers, with the help of the IDF, to come and just steal land. So,
the Palestine Refugee Agency has reached 35 So 35 UN staffers have been killed. We discussed this the other day that there's at least a dozen teachers who have been killed, and they say 40 UN installations have been damaged since the bombing began on October 7th. There was at least one UN shelter that was hit directly, and there were at least 5 others that were damaged with indirect hits. But that was the number that I'm giving you as of like a week ago. Now they're saying 40 UN buildings have been damaged in the bombing. They go on to say nearly 600,000 people are internally displaced and are sheltering in 150 UN buildings, with nearly 420,000 people seeking refuge in 93 of the agency's shelters. Is amazing. So you guys remember North Gaza? They told everybody in North Gaza you have to evacuate to South Gaza. And then even after they said that, though, the IDF was bombing in both Central Gaza and in South Gaza. And in fact, there was that big story about how 70 people or so were bombed when they were listening to the Israeli officials and they were evacuating from the north to the south. So it's not like, the south is untouched. In fact, it's still getting bombed very heavily. So there's no safe haven, basically, in Gaza right now. No safe haven at all. They say on top of the death toll, there's more than 1,000 people who have been reported missing and are presumed to be trapped or dead under the rubble. So again, that death rate is going to continue to skyrocket. The largest medical facility in Gaza, Shifa Hospital, is now treating around 5,000 patients, many times beyond its normal figure of around 700. The UN spokesperson said on Monday that the average number of people staying in Gaza shelters is around 4,400, around 2.5 times their designated capacity. Around 70 civilians are sharing space in each UNRWA classroom. See, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Now, on the Israeli side, of course, there's the 1,400 deaths, and that is almost all of them are from the initial Hamas terror attack on October 7th. And then they go on to describe here, there's basically a trickle of aid coming in. They need a colossal amount of aid to get in there to help these innocent civilians who are hurting. But as of right now, it's like 20 trucks that have gotten through. The UN...
So yeah, guys, what I said, I think my microphone was muted. I'm so sorry. What I said is, so Israel tells Gaza to move south. Move south, guys. Move. Hamas is here. We gotta bomb this area. Move south. It's safer there. People are moved south. Guess what happens? Israel bombs. Guys, move south to the Rafah crossing, to Egypt. Move. It's safe there. Guess what happens? IDF bombs it. 70 people. They blew up a caravan of innocent people. So, like, at this point, what the hell do you do if you're in Gaza? They're blowing up anything and they're saying Hamas was there. They have killed Al Jazeera journalists' families. Around 20-something journalists have died. Some in Lebanon. Like, they're just literally targeting innocent people. It's literally fucking hell. It's a hellhole there. Like, it's literally hell. And I don't know how these people live it. And I feel so... My heart breaks for the Israeli people that got killed in the terrorist attack. My heart breaks for every innocent life that's being taken on the Palestinian side. On both sides. This needs to stop. It really needs to stop.
says that that's equivalent to just 4% of the pre-crisis level of daily need. So in other words, they're only allowing in 4% of the aid that is needed. And in fact, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's not 20 aid trucks that got through. It's 34, but they need like thousands. They go on to say there's a desperate need for fuel, that even the medical facilities are either running out of fuel completely or on the brink of running out of fuel, and like the overwhelming majority of the medical facilities can't even function. We discussed stories of they're doing surgeries without anesthetics, which mean, of course, people are screaming in agony. I mean, this is really, really brutal stuff. I'm not sure we've ever seen anything like this in my lifetime. This is way worse than Operation Protective Edge in 2014. And honestly, this is way worse than anything that the U.S. did in Iraq or Afghanistan. This is a total medieval siege. And so I'll just give you this graphic here before we get on. I got a lot of stuff on this, guys. This list is never ending, unfortunately. So they say there's about 1.4 million people, internally displaced persons in Gaza, 50,000 pregnant women without basic services, 3 liters of water per person per day as of October 16th. That's the other thing. We discussed reports previously of Palestinians drinking seawater in order to survive, medical personnel drinking IV fluid bags in order to survive. Still a full electricity blackout for the 13th consecutive day. Again, as a direct result of that, you're going to see the civilian death toll climb tremendously. There's been 62 attacks on healthcare facilities, including the Al-Ali Hospital, as per the World Health Organization. So this, like, everybody's been debating whether or not that attack was a misfired Hamas rocket or Palestinian Jihad rocket, or if it was the IDF. Everybody's been debating that. But lost in the weeds is the idea that 62 health facilities have been attacked. Now, of course, the Al-Ali hospital bombing was the biggest one. But it's not like other hospitals aren't being attacked. It's not like civilian infrastructure isn't being attacked all over the place by the IDF. It absolutely is. Apartment buildings, mosques, markets. I mean, you guys know this. We've gone through this every day when we've covered.
And guys, Hamas is not hiding under all these buildings.
And they say 20,000
It's just
people
impossible that Hamas is hiding
mental health services. Well, that number is going to go up quite a bit. All right, so now let me give you some more on this here. This is reported from the New York Times, and as Chuds of TikTok says, this is beyond parody if it's true, okay? They explain that of the now over 5,000 people who've been killed in the Israeli bombings, the number of confirmed Hamas terrorists was 13.
Bro, what the fuck?
13.
Are you fucking serious?
So, look,
you see
I'm
what
not
I
good at
mean?
math here, but that would mean that it's like a 99% civilian death rate, right? And even if you want to say, nah, come on, it's got to be higher than that. Okay, let's be kind. 95% civilian death rate? 90% civilian death rate? I think 95% is an incredibly conservative figure. But this is what it says in the New York Times. Israel said it had begun the bombing campaign of the Gaza Strip to eliminate Hamas in retaliation for the October 7th assaults on its territory that killed at least 1,400 people in southern Israel. Since then, more than 4,000, now it's over 5,000 Palestinians have been killed. According to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, at least 13 of the casualties have been Hamas officials, according to statements by the group or by the Israeli military. So both Hamas and the Israeli military are saying, yeah, 13. Hamas, the group which controls Gaza, is considered a terror group by the United Nations and the European Union. Some of the deaths could not be independently verified. So again, that's just astonishing. And even if we say, no, it can't be that low, let's jack it up massively, you still have a 90%, 95% civilian death rate. Astonishing stuff, man. So I'm going to give you guys a warning for this one. You're about to see some graphic pictures here, but this is in Mediaite. Quote, what crimes did they commit? Photojournalist captures the horrors in Gaza. So here's one picture right here. I'm going to try to breeze through these again. Warning, these are going to be some graphic pictures. This kid in a family member's arms. It looks like the kid may be dead. By the way, all photos and videos are from Fidel Magari. So credit to this person. He's been witnessing all this stuff firsthand. Here you have operating on babies. Jesus Christ. I don't know how many of them survived, if any of them survived. I'm not going to click the video. Let's continue. Got some more. Another baby who was found under rubble. I don't know if he's alive or dead. Here you have a number of bodies that are being put into ambulances. It looks like they're dead. You have people praying on the side here. You also have more bodies here, people crying. I mean, this is just pure devastation. Another, what looks to be like a toddler in a stretcher, bringing him into the hospital.
Are these all Hamas
this
babies?
Is what's going on. This is the reality of what's happening on the ground.
These must be the Hamas babies.
So Now we move on over to Israel's former Prime Minister Yair Lapid.
We saw this.
Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. He's going to say something here, which
We
is
definitely
an
saw this last
astonishing
time.
admission. Okay? Buckle up. Get ready for this one. Listen to what he says.
If the international media is objective, it serves Hamas. If it just shows both sides, it serves Hamas.
Let's hear that one more time. I couldn't believe it the first time I listened to it. Listen again.
If the international media is objective, it serves Hamas. If it just shows both sides, it serves Hamas.
Fuck you. Go fuck yourself. You
So the
bald
media
head,
shouldn't
you
be
fucking
objective.
gray-haired
and the media
piece of
shouldn't
shit.
show both sides. He's arguing, look, the media should just be parroting our line.
This dude
the
looks
Israeli
evil as
government line.
fuck. Look at him. He looks
That's
like
what
Count
he's
Dooku.
saying. That's astonishing. And by the way, they have been cracking down on media agencies in Israel. More on that in a minute. Not only that, they've been cracking down on Israeli politicians in the Knesset who are critical of what the IDF is currently doing in Gaza. Really, really.
That shit sounds like fascism,
Total
guys.
hysteria,
That sounds like
total
fascism.
mania, total,
Cracking
like,
down on a democracy?
9/11
You can't be a
train wreck
democracy
that we're looking
and
at
an
here. This is very
apartheid
similar to
state.
what it felt like in the
I'm
United
sorry.
States, the hysteria and the mania after 9/11, where everybody just wanted revenge and retribution and retaliation, and they didn't care about the details or the specifics. All right, more. So look at this. This was reported in Democracy Now! Shout out to Mac, aka Good Politic Guy, for highlighting this for us. The only democracy in the Middle East is currently suspending members of government and arresting citizens who criticize the government. Knesset suspends lawmaker Ofer Kassif for criticizing Israel's war on Gaza. An Israeli Parliament Ethics Committee has suspended Knesset member Ofer Kassif for 45 days after Kassif criticized Israel's assault on Gaza. His suspension comes as Israeli authorities have arrested more than 100 Israeli citizens over social media posts supporting Palestinians in Gaza. No dissent allowed. No free speech allowed. No different opinions allowed. You fall in line. You bow your head. You toe the line. You say what we want you to say. This is a nightmare scenario. This is as authoritarian as it gets. And this, remember, they love to use the line, only democracy in the Middle East. Only democracy in the Middle East. First of all, it's not. Lebanon has some semblance of a democracy as well. And also, Israel is either an ethno-state or a theocracy, or a mix of an ethno-state and a theocracy. So to just call it a democracy
And
is
an apartheid
incredibly misleading. All right, so really wild stuff. More. So now, with all this crazy stuff going on, you would think the U.S. would pump the brakes a little bit, would be critical to one extent or another of the moves taken by Israel. You'd be wrong. So here we have a State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller. Listen to what he says about the idea of a potential ceasefire.
Joseph Borrell, the EU foreign policy chief, said that he expects EU leaders to work toward a call for a humanitarian pause in what's happening in Gaza to bring in some aid. Is the United States in conversation?
Shout out to this guy for asking a question from the year 1974. I respect the hair. I respect the button down. I shouldn't make jokes in this segment, but I just had to point that out.
With the Europeans about that? Would the United States support such a call?
We are in conversations with the Europeans about this question of getting humanitarian aid in, and we are in conversations with the government of Israel and the government of Egypt about how best to get humanitarian aid in. But I think with this question, whether you call it a pause or whether you call it a ceasefire, you have to think about what that would mean in this context when Israel has suffered this terrorist attack, and Israel continues to suffer ongoing terrorist attacks. There are rockets, as I said a moment ago, that continue to be launched from Gaza.
Yeah, and you guys... Okay, Israel just suffered an ongoing terrorist attack, and you guys keep on ongoingly stealing Palestinian land. Ongoingly? You guys are breaking UN laws. And ongoingly, when you break UN laws, which are there to maintain peace amongst humans, that's why it's called United Nations. When you break those laws, you can't act like nothing's gonna happen. Of course, terrorism is bad. But when you push people to the limit, when you starve, because these people like to use the word animals, right? The Israeli government likes to say animal a lot. So let's talk in their terms. If you starve a fucking dog it's gonna eventually bite. If you keep people held up with no rights, no future, they're gonna fucking attack. And you've been breaking law after law, UN law, stealing land, settler colonies, settlements. The March of Return, they got sniped. And then you want to act like, oh, this started in a vacuum. There was nothing before this. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Fuck out of here, bro.
Targeting Israel.
There's some
Any
fucking
ceasefire
colonialism
would give
shit.
Hamas the ability to rest, to refit, and to get ready to continue launching terrorist attacks against Israel. You can understand perfectly clearly why that's an intolerable situation for Israel.
A ceasefire is an intolerable situation for Israel. Why? Because Hamas. But hold on. According to their own admission, they killed 13 Hamas terrorists and they've killed 5,000 innocent civilians. The low number of women and children who were killed was 62%. They are leveling civilian infrastructure in Gaza. They are doing a medieval-style siege, not allowing in food, fuel, water, etc. And you're saying we can't do a ceasefire because Hamas. Listen, Hamas is not a get-out-of-jail-free card, where it's like you say the name Hamas and then voila, we're allowed to commit however many war crimes we want and violate international law willy-nilly. That's not how this works. So this dead-eyed ghoul is a liar. He is a paid liar. We can't do a ceasefire because of Hamas. Well, that's cold comfort to a Palestinian grandma who's dying because she has no clean water. It's unbelievable, the stuff that they say, man. So we are, look, despite some different rhetoric around the edges from Democratic politicians, the policy of the U.S. government is across the board, united and consistent. It's Israel has a right to defend itself. We're not for a ceasefire. Israel, and now you get the furthest left position that they allow is, let's pause the bombing for a little bit to deliver more humanitarian aid, and then you go back to bombing. So in other words, the Democratic position on this is bomb nicer. It's not call for a ceasefire. It's not end the bloodshed.
Would you bomb us nicer?
It's not allow Palestinians to go back to their homes and the medieval siege. No, the position is
my child's
bomb
head
nicer.
blew off. Could you bomb us a little nicer?
Send in some humanitarian aid on the one hand, and on the other hand, bomb that family.
Fucking
next.
bullshit, bro.
And of course, the Republican position is no ceasefire, no humanitarian pause, no aid trucks, no nothing. Just like do a complete and utter genocide of Gaza. Unbelievable. All right, I got more for you. The IDF tells the Times of Israel it is concerned that Hamas might release more hostages, which might delay the ground invasion.
Of course.
So originally we were told, hey, they're not doing the ground invasion because there was some bad weather in the region. There was a lot of rain that came, and that was true. Early on, there was rain right after the troops, got set up on the border. So we heard that, and then that became, okay, but now people really are worried about the hostages, so what are we going to do? It seems to me the Israeli government wants to do the ground invasion, but they're being held back. They're afraid of the negative PR if they do a ground invasion while there are still hostages. And then there's another theory, which we'll get to in a minute, as to why they've held off on the ground invasion. But in the Times of Israel, they're saying that it's concerned Hamas might release more hostages because that would delay the ground invasion. All right, more. And by the way, there were some hostages that were released. We're going to get to more on that in a little bit in this segment. Here we go. Trita Parsi. He's an expert on the issue of Iran and U.S. foreign policy. He says, wow, U.S. official tells Yonatan Tuval that Israel's ground invasion has been delayed to give the U.S. time to prepare for the broader regional war Israel's invasion of Gaza will spark. Hence, I assume, Biden's refusal to call for de-escalation. So, in other words, this is the other theory as to why they haven't ground invaded yet, even though they're set up for it. It's that Biden said to Israel, hold on, you could do your ground invasion, but wait a little bit. The U.S. military needs to make preparations so that when Hezbollah jumps in, we could bomb them on your behalf. And if Iran gets even more directly involved, we can bomb them on your behalf. So we need to be prepared for all-out war in the Middle East. So just hold your horses a little bit on the invasion.
Yo, what the fuck are we getting ourselves into,
But let us
guys?
get prepared to be directly involved in another Middle East war. Oh my God. All right, more. The World Health Organization says nearly 2/3 of Gaza's health facilities have ceased functioning. 2/3. I can't imagine. You're a civilian. You have a serious injury. You were piled under rubble, rocks. An apartment building collapsed on your head. You need help. You go to the hospital, and they go, we can't help you. We don't have anesthetic, so we can't do a surgery. Or if we do a surgery, it'll be the most painful thing.
You should have been born in Hamas's area, civilian.
Also, we don't have fuel. We can't do anything here. And this is all happening. Israel is doing this on purpose with the backing of the United States of America. More. The UN reports at least 42% of Gaza's housing units are damaged or destroyed. 1.4 million Gazans, or more than half of the territory's population, have been displaced. 42% of Gaza's housing units
This is genocide,
have been destroyed by Israeli bombing.
Fucking genocide,
Nearly
I
half
swear
of
to
Gaza
God.
has been wiped off the map. So here's a little bit more on some of the hostages that were released. There were 2 American hostages that were released, and then I believe there were 2 Israeli hostages who were released. So this is in CNN. One of the released hostages, quote, "I went through hell." That's the title. This is an 85-year-old hostage. Then they go on to say in the article, Lifshitz, that's what her name is, said she was initially grouped together with 25 other people before her captors separated her into a smaller group with 4 other individuals from her kibbutz. She said they slept on mattresses on the floor of the tunnels, ate the same food as Hamas fighters, and received regular treatment from doctors during her incarceration. Quote, "They really took care of the sanitary side of things so that we didn't get sick," Lifshitz added. Each of the 5 hostages in her group received their own doctor, and there was a paramedic present who supervised medication, she said. Quote, "They were very generous to us, very kind. They kept us clean," Lifshitz said. "They took care of every detail. There are a lot of women, and they know about feminine hygiene, and they took care of everything there." So this is their own first-hand account, being a hostage of Hamas. This doesn't in any way, shape, or form take away from the brutality of the Hamas terror attack against the 1,400 civilians who were massacred. Some of the most disgusting, grotesque, brutal things you can ever imagine happened to the Israeli citizens who were gunned down by Hamas. This woman, as a hostage, tells her story, and this is what she says. All right, now we're going to go to the UN. So this is UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and he is going to, in so many words, say, hey, can you kind of reel it in a little bit with the war crime on top of war crime?
And they're going to call him anti-Semitic.
Can you kind of pump the brakes on pretending like international law doesn't exist at all? So I'm going to play you what he says, and then we'll get to the Israeli reaction.
Bunch of bitch-ass culeros.
We must demand that all parties uphold and respect their obligations under international humanitarian law. Take constant care in the conduct of military operations to spare civilians, and respect and protect hospitals, and respect the inviolability of UN facilities, which today are sheltering more than 600,000 Palestinians. The relentless bombardment of Gaza by Israeli forces, the level of civilian casualties, and the wholesale destruction of neighborhoods continue to mount and are deeply alarming. I mourn and honor dozens of UN colleagues working for UNRWA. Sadly, at least 35 and counting, killed in the bombardment of Gaza over the last 2 weeks. I owe to their families my condemnation of these and many other similar killings. The protection of civilians is paramount in any armed conflict. Protecting civilians can never mean using them as human shields. Protecting civilians does not mean ordering more than 1 million people to evacuate to the south, where there is no shelter, no food, no water, no medicine, and no fuel, and then continuing to bomb the south itself. I am deeply concerned about the clear violations of international humanitarian law that we are witnessing in Gaza. Let me be clear, no party to an armed conflict is above international humanitarian law.
All right, so that was very clear. It was straightforward. Hey, Israel, stop committing endless war crimes. International law matters. It appears like you don't care about civilians. You better reel it in, right? Straightforward, simple. Well, guess what? Now we have the Israeli ambassador weighing in on this, and listen to how unhinged this is.
This morning, when he started his speech at the Security Council by saying that Hamas attacks did not happen in a vacuum, this is really something that every decent person,
It didn't
should
happen
be
in a
unfathomable
vacuum.
for each and every one of us. Mr. Secretary General, the UN was established to prevent atrocities, to prevent such atrocities like the barbaric atrocities that Hamas committed.
And like the ones that you're carrying out
Yeah.
in response, where there's over a 95% civilian death rate, and you're doing a medieval siege against a 2.3 million innocent civilians, like that too. All right, he's not done.
The UN is failing. The UN is failing, and you, Mr. Secretary General, have lost.
The UN is failing, but not for the reason you think.
Because
The UN is failing because they're incapable of reeling you in.
the United States is holding them back.
All morality and
No
impartiality.
one can do shit because the United
Because
States is supporting
when you
Israel.
say those
The United States is
terrible
a superpower.
words that these heinous attacks did not happen in a vacuum, you are tolerating terrorism.
Oh
And
my god. So apparently earlier on in the UN head speech, he brought up the Hamas terror attack and he was like, look, this didn't happen in a vacuum. That's not a justification. That's not a rationalization. That is an attempt at an explanation. It's saying, hey, look at the circumstances which led to this. And of course, the broader point is, maybe it's the endless occupation. Maybe it's Palestinians living in a permanent police state. Maybe it's people in Gaza having zero rights at all and being bombed on a regular basis. Maybe it's people in the West Bank who get their villages bulldozed to the ground by illegal ultra-Orthodox Israeli settlers, and then they just steal their land. That was the point. It's not to say, I support Hamas massacring civilians. Of course not. So this is a total bait and switch. He's straw-manning the guy to then knock down the straw man, to say, oh, you're defending Hamas. He's not defending Hamas. He's saying, how did we get to this point where this happened? And what do we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? He's still not done. Wait for it.
tolerating terrorism, you are justifying terrorism. Hamas, as the minister explained, beheaded babies, burned families, raped women,
And
abducted
you guys are blowing babies up.
kids,
with
babies,
missiles.
Holocaust survivors. And the SG is blaming the victim? You are blaming Israel?
Blaming you for killing over 95% civilians in response. For now, tripling or quadrupling the number of civilians that Hamas killed. That's what you're being blamed for. Not for the terror attack. Not for the Hamas terror attack on you. For your own terrorism in response to it. Like this guy's, look, I don't know how else to get this across. This is dense on purpose. This is misleading on purpose. This is cry bully shit, is what it is.
This is a pure blood libel. This is a pure blood libel, and I think that the Secretary General must resign.
So for those of you who don't know, blood libel is an old anti-Semitic trope. You know, when the argument was made that, you know, Jews are uniquely evil and they control the world and they like drink the blood of babies and they do, like there were all these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and tropes that many people believe.
Bunch of weird shit.
And he's saying that because the head of the UN said, hey, chill with the war crimes, hey, chill with violating international law. And also, by the way, how do we get to the point where this Hamas terror attack happened? Did it happen in a vacuum? Did they wake up one day and say, I am only filled with pure hatred and I get killed because I get off on killing? Yes. Is that how it happened? Or was there a backstory that led to it? Not to justify it, not to rationalize it, none of that stuff, because of course it is condemnable and disgusting and grotesque and brutal. But to say, how did this happen? How do we get to this point? Because he brought up those points, they go, oh, you're doing blood libel and you need to step down. So simply by asking, Israel, can you please follow international law? He's flipping out and saying you need to resign. So grotesque. We're not done. So, of course, there was the raging debate around the Al-Ali hospital and, hey, who bombed it? Was it...
Yo, they're literally like, the United Nations is like, can you guys not blow innocent civilians up, please? And Israeli government's like, anti-Semitism. Oh. You know what I mean? It's like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
a misfired Islamic Jihad rocket or Hamas rocket, or was it Israel bombing it? And look, you guys can go check out my original segment on that. I took all the evidence that we had at the time, and I broke it down in detail and gave you my take. My general takeaway is, Hamas and Islamic Jihad don't have rockets that are that powerful. When you play the audio on a rocket from Hamas, it's these little rinky-dink things that they slap together using like broken down pipes and what remains of the munitions that Israel shot at them. They're tiny rockets. They really don't have the ability to kill massive numbers of people. So based on the sound of it, and also based on Occam's razor, that the most likely scenario is the people who fired that rocket are the same ones who fired 7,000 other rockets into Gaza, right? Like that's the default perspective, right? So breaking down all the evidence at the time, I came to the conclusion it probably is the IDF. Then there was like London School of Architecture did a forensic analysis of it, and they said the same thing, that they don't think that it was a misfired Islamic Jihad rocket. Well, Israeli intelligence and U.S. intelligence came out and they go, actually, we did our own study. And we say, in fact, it was Hamas. Well, the New York Times chimes in here. Israeli and U.S. intelligence officials believe that a projectile captured on video shortly before the Al Ali explosion was a Palestinian rocket. New York Times visual investigations found that this object was launched from Israel and likely unrelated to the deadly blast. So even the New York Times is now pumping the brakes on the IDF narrative and the U.S. government narrative. But look, this fight's going to rage on. Fact of the matter, though, is this. Even if you want to say, oh, dude, that was definitely Hamas or that was definitely Islamic Jihad and they definitely did the Al Ali hospital bombing, this number is not made up. In fact, we just covered it. How many other hospital bombings have there been since this fighting started in Gaza? 61. I should be clear, medical facility bombings, not just hospitals. 61. Are all 61 Hamas? Is it?
Yeah, they were.
Is every apartment building that's been bombed Hamas? Is every UN shelter that's been bombed Hamas?
Are you anti-Semitic?
Is every mosque that's been bombed Hamas?
Yes. Hey, Kyle, are you anti-Semitic?
Bombed Hamas?
Yo, Kyle.
Was it Hamas
Kyle, anti-Semitic?
that shut off the
Hey,
power
Kyle,
and cut off the water and the food and the fuel to Gaza also? Were they the ones who decided to do that?
Yo, Kyle,
Oh, that's right.
anti-Semitic, bro.
It was Israel that decided to do that, to do collective punishment in retaliation to a brutal terror attack that they suffered. They saw Hamas do collective punishment of Israelis, and they said, oh, we're going to do collective punishment right back to your civilians. All right, more. Now, this I cannot verify, but I've seen so many of these floating around Twitter, I wanted to share at least one of them with you. This guy says, this was my brother's last post. I'm sorry, Mahmoud. The world has let Israel murder you, and the world is letting Israel murder other families. And then this guy, again, I can't verify this, but I've seen so many of these, I felt compelled to at least bring one of them to you. This guy had said, could be my last post on LinkedIn, as Israel will soon cut off the internet in preparation for our genocide and forced expulsion. This comes with full support of the free world who is cheering Israel on. The world has lost its last sliver of humanity. It is everyone's duty to speak about this. Do not let Israel murder us. And apparently, this very well may have been this dude's last message publicly, and he was killed in the bombing. This is just one example. Like I said, I've seen at least 6 or 7 of these floating around Twitter. Can't verify any of them individually, but based on the casualty number and the fact we know it's at least 62% women and children being killed and over 90% civilian death rate, there's a lot of this going on in reality. A lot of innocent people being murked in reality. All right, we also have this. 24 military personnel wounded in drone strikes on U.S. military bases. 24 U.S. military personnel were reportedly wounded last week after 2 American military bases in Iraq and Syria were hit by drones. U.S. Central Command told NBC News that 20 personnel were injured at the Syrian Al-Tanf military base on October 18th after at least 2 drones attacked the compound, while 4 personnel were injured at the Iraqi Al-Assad military base on the same day. 3 drones were shot down during the attacks, and all injured personnel were returned to duty. The strikes occurred last week, but the extent of the damage was not reported until Tuesday. So there have been retaliatory strikes against U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, which, by the way, fair conversation to have. Why the hell do we have bases in Iraq and Syria? But there's been retaliatory attacks over what Israel's doing in Gaza, because the world knows full well that we are backing them carrying out this massacre in Gaza. And so they go, okay, we'll go after the Americans too. And then, Jesus, I don't think people realize we are on the brink of all-out war with Hezbollah and Lebanon and Iran, and that would dwarf the Iraq war and make the Iraq war look like peanuts. If we go to war with Iran, it would be disastrous. All right, more. Breaking news, the Biden administration believes Israel lacks achievable military goals in Gaza, senior U.S. officials said.
Wow, just like
So it seems like it would be a bad idea.
sounds like
To
Afghanistan.
give them all the money in the world and all the weapons in the world and cheer them on, which is exactly what our policy is, to not call for a ceasefire. They know, oh my God, this is going to be like after 9/11, where we went haywire and nobody reeled us in, and it was a disaster. So many people died, so much money was wasted, we broke a region of the world. The U.S. is currently watching Israel do those same things. They're actively facilitating it, and then internally they're telling each other they don't even have achievable military goals. Yeah, the whole point is the revenge and the collective punishment. That's what's going on.
Look,
All right.
looks like
Now we get to
AI.
some reactions. So Nikki Haley, get this, man. God, she's so loathsome. By the way, she also came out and said, oh, we have a Department of Defense. I don't even know why we have that. It should be called the Department of Offense. I'd like for us to go on the offense from time to time. She is such a warmonger, it's absurd. She has never met a war she didn't like. She says this, I'm proud to have been the first governor to sign anti-BDS legislation. There will be no tolerance for anti-Semitism when I'm president.
I think that we're just defending ourselves.
So for those of you who don't know, BDS is boycott, divestment,
Yeah, we're going to
sanctions.
war again. I guess we're defending
Boycott, divestment,
ourselves.
sanctions
So
is
was defense.
the
Defending
attempt
ourselves.
To,
It used to be called the Department of
through
War.
economic means, peacefully
Propaganda.
force
That's why it's
Israel
called the Defense
to reach some
Department.
sort of a deal or an agreement with Palestinians where they have
Hey, we're
political
gonna
rights
blow
and
up
human rights and a
Muslims
state of their own.
in the Middle East,
That's what
defending
BDS
ourselves,
You
guys.
do BDS of the occupied territories to try to get Israel off of the occupied territories and give them back to Palestinians, whose right it is to those territories. And she says, no, that's anti-Semitic, and I'm banning it. Well, what happened? I thought you guys were all about free speech. I thought you guys were all about free speech and free expression, and even if I don't like what you're saying or what you support, you still have a right to say it or do it. No, she's banning it and saying it's because it's anti-Semitism. So let me get this straight. If Palestinians resist violently, they can't do that because that's terrorism and that's bad. But if they resist peacefully by using economic pressure, doing something like BDS, they're not allowed to do that either. You're going to try to ban it and call it anti-Semitic. So how can Palestinians resist? How can they? They can't. They can't. Your whole point is to say, sit there and take it. All right, more. Look at this. Governor DeSantis just ordered the University of Florida and the University of South Florida to deactivate their Students for Justice in Palestine groups for violating Florida's laws against anti-Semitism. Where are all the free speech warriors on this one? The Dave Rubins of the world, the Ben Shapiros of the world, who love all about free speech.
They're
I
gone.
love free speech. I'm all about free speech, bro.
They don't give
I'm
a
all about
fuck.
free speech, bro. First Amendment, bro. They won't say a goddamn word about this. They'll say nothing, and if they do say something, they'll actually support DeSantis on this. So the argument is, well, I'm just going to declare that the Students for Justice in Palestine group, they're all pro-Hamas, which means pro-terrorist, which means we need to ban them. First of all, that would be a lie, just assuming everybody part of this group is pro-Hamas. I'm anti-Hamas, but I'm also for a free Palestine and Palestinian human rights. The name of the group is Students for Justice in Palestine. He's banning it and declaring you're all anti-Semites. On First Amendment grounds, you can't ban that and shouldn't be able to ban that. And then also, it's not true that they're anti-Semites. That's like saying, if you criticize the government of Saudi Arabia, you're an Islamophobe. Are you criticizing the caliphate? You're an Islamophobe. No. No, you could not be an Islamophobe, but also be very critical of a Saudi theocracy. You could be very critical of Israel and not be an anti-Semite. There's a conflation there. It's, oh God, unbelievable. So Mr. Free Speech all of a sudden throws free speech out the window when it comes to Israel. All right, and I got one more for you. Look at this, man. There's a whole thread. We're not going to go through the whole thread, but there's a whole thread of people who are getting fired for speaking out for Palestinians now. This is from Owen Jones. This is a Jewish man with Israeli family. He used his platform to draw attention to racist dehumanization of Palestinians. He was fired as editor of eLife for doing this. So this guy said the following. The Onion speaks with more courage, insight, and moral clarity than the leaders of every academic institution put together. I wish there were a The Onion University. And he's quote tweeting, dying Gazans criticized for not using last words to condemn Hamas. So that's The Onion being clever. That apparently it doesn't matter how many civilians Israel massacres. You're only allowed to say, Hamas bad. Well,
Hamas
every
bad,
reasonable
guys.
person
Hamas
agrees.
is bad. He's a
Hamas
bad
bad,
dude.
Hamas evil, Hamas
Hamas
terrorist,
bad
for what they
group.
did to those innocent Israeli civilians.
Bad hombres.
You can also criticize the IDF for murking 4 times as many civilians now. So this is a guy who cares about civilian deaths, and he says, look, the Onion's doing a better job than most academic institutions. So, of course, I've been informed, this same guy, I've been informed that I am being replaced as editor-in-chief of eLife for retweeting the Onion piece that calls out indifference to the lives of Palestinian civilians. This is one of many people. Crystal just interviewed somebody who wrote a book about the plight of like a Palestinian father, and that dude had a book tour. It was just canceled. So many people who are in favor of Palestinian human rights are getting thrown under the bus, and there's massive cancel culture directed at them right now. And then the final point I'll make, there was, this was floating around Twitter. There was a bunch of celebrities who released a letter, and the letter there was one letter that was like, let's do a ceasefire. Credit to those celebrities who signed that one. We talked about that on the last show. There's a new one that wanted to commend Joe Biden for his leadership, and it asked Joe Biden to free the hostages held by Hamas.
How the fuck is how did Joe Biden gotta do that?
Joe Biden doesn't hold the hostages held by Hamas. That's not he's not doing it. That's not him. It's Hamas that has it. Why are you asking Joe to release Hamas's hostages? Jesus Christ. Look, post 9/11 mania, that's what it feels like right now. I hate doing these long segments where I give you all the updates, but I feel like we have to do it. But it feels like we're just in Cookiesville, you know, and I don't know how to get out of it. All I can do is give you the news, and you guys do with the information what you will, but everybody seemingly has lost their goddamn minds, and we're all just casually sitting here as Gaza is being wiped off the map and Palestinian civilians are being ethnically cleansed. There's no other way to say it. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time.
What is this? What do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything in this board.